Take a look at these books. They're pretty popular. You may have read them, see a friend reading them, or even seen the film adaptation of them, but they all have one thing in common, and that is LGBTQ plus representation. With this theme of LGBTQ plus, they are therefore being targeted within our very own Congress floor today. Hello, my name is Samantha Dotson, and today I'm going to be telling you about the gender binary. The gender binary is a sex classification system that defines everyone as a male or female depending on their biological reproductive system. What does this thing have to do with these books? Well, the gender binary enforces anything outside of cisgender and heterosexual ideologies to be diminished, and that includes beloved LGBTQ plus books or even LGBTQ plus people in their communities. The gender binary also perpetuates dangerous stereotypes of queer and trans people, therefore stigmatizing and dehumanizing these individuals, which outcasts them from hetero and cisgender society. Not only do these individuals' communities and their own friends outcast them, LGBTQ plus people have significantly higher rates of familial estrangement. While these problems play into queer and trans people's everyday lives, they are more likely to suffer from suicidal thoughts, anxiety, depression, or even drug abuse. Now, as you can see on the graph on the right, one third of American LGBTQ individuals say that discrimination has had an effect on their ability to be hired. And while one third sounds like a relatively small number, that is approximately 8 million Americans. That is 8 million people who think their ability to be hired has been impacted by their gender or sexuality identity. Now, as I mentioned earlier, trans people experience an obscure amount of misrepresentation in the media and TV because the gender binary requires that trans people express themselves through cisgender ideologies. Therefore, transgender expression cannot be fully comprehended. Similarly, distinct individual groups are often grouped into one group, the LGBTQ group, rather than rejoicing in pride within each community. For example, opposing straight people with strictly gay people erases everyone in between and erases bisexuality. Another example being the concept of a gay white man having more privileges than a Black trans woman. All of these struggles combined create a false sense of inferiority within the LGBTQ community compared to the heteronormative society. All of these truly gruesome impacts diminish the lives of queer and trans peoples in their every single day life. Trans people have to endure divisive sex classification that doesn't align with their preferred sex every time they go to the doctor or fill out a medical form. Oppositional sexism between men and women and gay and straight people erases the existence of everyone in between. And all of this, therefore, hinders the interaction between hetero and cisgender society. But there is a solution to eradicate gender and sexuality discrimination as much as possible. The idea of a gender spectrum allows variation of every gender, which already happens biologically. Gathered with a societal change, it would allow the concept of a gender spectrum to be more inclusive and more affirming to everybody involved. Similarly, allowing sexuality to be a spectrum rather than cut and dry labels assigned to you would allow for everyone to love one another the way they want to. However, accepting solely the ideas of a spectrum is not the only action we as a society must take. Like I mentioned, there are many legislations in Congress and in every state's Congress targeting trans people in sports and forcing them to play in the class of sport of their gender assigned at birth rather than their preferred gender. There are also many bills and even some laws passed in certain states preventing gender affirming healthcare to trans people, particularly trans youth. Some of you may be familiar with the law coined as the Don't Say Gay law, which targets LGBTQ plus themes in education as inappropriate. And there are many activists and movements calling for certain anti-discriminatory laws already in place to be repealed. However, this is not without its solutions. The Equality Act would amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Similarly, the Customer Non-Discrimination Act would prohibit discrimination on the same basis within the public. So therefore, moving forward, the best way to get started is starting local within your local elections in your local communities. Next, you can always contact your representatives, email them, or shoot them a letter. If your representatives don't know the amount of support a certain bill or ideology has, they may not vote the way that the community wants them to or push for ideologies that the community wants them to. Education and awareness of bills and elections coming up to your peers is a great way to spread information and grow movements. Most importantly, vote. It is the most effective way to enact change. Vote for pro LGBTQ legislation. Vote for representatives who will keep your favorite books in the library shelves. Vote for representatives who will support queer and trans individuals and who will support you and your peers. The lives and the discrimination of LGBTQ plus people are not something to shy away from. We must act on the discrepancies between hetero and cisgender society and LGBTQ plus communities. Thank you.